America Cantor and House Democratic leader Nancy Pelosi.
Greeting everyone on the podium right now. In just a few minutes, there he is with Chief Justice Roberts and Justice Kennedy as well. In just a few minutes, we're going to be hearing from the chairman of the inaugural committee, Senator Charles Schumer of New York. He will introduce Myrlie Evers Williams, the widow of Medgar Evers, for the invocation.
As we look at the Capitol, we look at the president there with that smile. Once again, let's take a look. 4 years ago, and now, of course, he's 51 years old now. Let's take a look at that split screen one more time.
Inaugural ceremonies, the Honorable Charles E. Schumer.
Constitution of the United States.
Against all enemies, foreign and domestic.
Against all enemies, foreign and domestic.
That I will bear true faith and allegiance to the same.
I will bear true faith and allegiance to the same.
That I take this obligation freely.
That I take this obligation freely.
Without any mental reservation or purpose of evasion.
Without any mental reservation or purpose of evasion.
And that I will well and faithfully discharge.
And that I will well and faithfully discharge.
The duties of the office on which I am about to enter.
The duties of the office upon which I am about to enter.
So help me God.
So help me God.
Congratulations.
Obama do solemnly swear.
I, Barack Hussein Obama, do solemnly swear
that I will faithfully execute the office of President of the United States.
The office of President of the United States.
And will, to the best of my ability.
And will, to the best of my ability.
Preserve, protect, and defend.
Preserve, protect, and defend.
The Constitution of the United States.
The Constitution of the United States.
So help you God.
So help me God.
Congratulations, Mr. President.
these two guys are just star-crossed on the oath.
We'll return to the ceremonies.
Vice President Biden, Mr. Chief Justice, members of the United States Congress, distinguished guests, and fellow citizens. Each time we gather to inaugurate a president, we bear witness to the enduring strength of our Constitution. We affirm.
As the president makes his way to the limousine, the honor today falls to Major General Michael Lennington of the U.S. Army, who, with the Military District of Washington, gets to be his escort this part of the way. Michael Beschloss, that's about as heavy on military tradition as we get for this event, but it's the only branch of the active duty service where they're allowed to and actually asked to wear wigs.
That's exactly right, and I think we won't see that in any others either, on any other occasions. Wouldn't have it any other way, given early American history. And in a way, doing it here is another bow to earlier American history, because presidential inaugurations for many decades were held on this east front of the Capitol.
That's right.
Until Ronald Reagan in 1981. It was moved to the other side, not by Reagan, but was intended to do that even before he was the sure winner in 1980.
As a D.C. resident, tell all of our viewers the significance of the president ordering that all the vehicles in the motorcade and henceforth in his presidency have these taxation without representation license plates.
Very strong debate that's gone on really as long as Washington, D.C. has been under home rule, which is since the mid-1970s, which is, should D.C. have 2 senators and a governor, since residents of D.C. do pay taxes? They got the vote, were able to vote for president only as early as 1964, because the original idea was that D.C. would be a federal district sort of abstracted from the other 50 states. People who are here, however, say, we pay taxes, we're Americans, we deserve representation. That has, taxation without representation has been on Washington, D.C. license plates a long time. George W. Bush did not use them for 8 years. Barack Obama did not during his first term. Now he's begun.
It is game time for members of what's known in the U.S. Secret Service as PPD, the Presidential Protection Division, the closest circle of enforcement officials. As the specially tricked out Cadillac gets underway, part of this massive, massive motorcade. The motorcycles come first. Sadly, another modern feature of the motorcade has been the addition of an ambulance bringing up the rear since the time of Lyndon Johnson. The agents will use the old-fashioned running boards on the SUV behind the limousine. They can jump on and off. That's been the case for the last several inaugurations. There's a camera truck, as you can tell, from which we're getting these pictures, just in front of the limousine. And so we begin, and it strikes me I'm joined by 3 other former fellow White House correspondents here on this distinguished panel: David Gregory, Savannah Guthrie, and Tom Brokaw. And Tom, things have changed in this regard over the years.
Yeah, I think what we need to remind our audience is that we here don't know the threat level that the Secret Service is hearing. And, you know, it does seem like it's excessive on many occasions, but at the same time they're responding to what may be in the air or intercepts that they've picked up in some fashion. Unfortunately, it's become a fixed part of American life, as we all know. You can't go to an airport, you can't go check in at a corporate place somewhere. I'm thinking the other day, nothing moves in America without being recorded on a video camera somewhere. That's good for law enforcement because they pick up a lot of people, but it is invasive after all. And it's a shame that you come to the nation's capital and there are so many restrictions on where you can go and when you can go. Having said that, we live in a very dangerous world in which it's difficult to track a lot of these people who want to do harm, especially in the nation's capital.
But of course, what perpetuates, just to take the other side, just to argue devil's advocate, this huge security city-state we have built up, especially since 9/11, is the not knowing that someone does know the threat level or lack of it. A lot of questions aren't asked. In the business of government, it's a blackout item. These are often not line items in the budgets that are using our taxpayer money.
Well, I quite agree with you. In fact, I thought at the conventions this summer there was real excess going on when the president wasn't even in town, as a matter of fact. And what I've learned, having talked to state and local officials, is they get in on the federal largesse. They're asked to provide a certain number of officers, so they load it up and they all get their...
Yeah, the dirty little secret: if your city's in the bidding to get one of these conventions, beware, because your downtown will get shut down during those 4 days. Tamron Hall is on the vehicle part of the motorcade as we hear the first whoops from the crowd. Hey, Tamron.
Hey there, Brian. We're hearing the first screams, and that's because the president is just a few yards behind me in what we know is referred to as the Beast, his official car. And it's funny, Brian, you mentioned the day is delightful, and I can say we saw the pageantry of earlier, and now we're seeing the passion as so many of these people will get a glimpse of this president. And because the weather is so beautiful compared to what we all experienced 4 years ago, there's a lot of speculation on social media and even the way we used to communicate face-to-face, where people have said to me, Tamron, do you think he's going to get out more than twice? Do you think it's possible that he could walk the entire route a la Jimmy Carter, the 40 minutes of this 1.5-mile journey to the White House? I don't know about that, but certainly when you combine the weather and the beauty of the day, and we know that this is the president's second term, there's a possibility that we might see him get out of that vehicle with the First Lady once, twice, maybe even 3 times here. So that's a part of it. But I got to tell you, Brian, back to what I refer to as the passion. I'm looking at these faces of people from all parts of this country, all races, different ages, and there are smiles. Many of them voted for the president, perhaps some of them are. We know that in 1865, that was the first year of Abraham Lincoln's second inauguration that African Americans were allowed to participate. In 1917, the first year women were allowed to participate in this inaugural parade. So we saw the exit polling and those who came out and supported this president by those numbers. We heard the references to the gay community in his speech today, reaching out. We know that this is Martin Luther King's holiday, the federal holiday commemorating the life and legacy of that great individual, and it's all tied into this moment, I think, where people were at the mall and they could see the president from a distance, but perhaps their children who have their iPhones and their cameras can stand along this barricade and hopefully maybe even lock eyes with this president of the United States. So it is quite an experience to be here, and to your point, this delightful day just adds to it all, Brian.
Tamron, back up. Did I just hear you use the phrase, the way we used to communicate face-to-face?
Yeah, we used to communicate face-to-face, and people would come up to a reporter and talk to you, and now they comment to us on Twitter and Facebook. So I was reading, the Twitter accounts for NBC and MSNBC, and people were speculating whether the president would take advantage of the lovely weather. But then I decided to, do it the old school way, since I'm 42 and been at this game for a long time, and actually talk to people face-to-face and ask them. And many of them thought that, hey, why not see the First Lady in that beautiful dress and the president walk out and beam those smiles to these folks who just want to get a glimpse and be a part of what this is, which is the American process. This is who we are. And today, on a day like to this, hi, people are even waving at me, so that's how desperate they are. They just want a glimpse of happiness, and they're waiting to see the president, Brian.
Well, Tamron, thank you. Remember, you chose to drop the H-bomb, not me. Tamron Hall along the parade route, thank you. As you look at the phalanx, let's use that word for the first time. We always use it every year, of Harley-Davidsons with sidecars. Looks like the entire annual output of their factory, keeping Harley-Davidson. Savannah, I'm looking at the manhole cover in the center of the picture. Even those are welded shut, the length of this.
And given the security situation, the security environment, it's a great act of confidence and faith that the president and first lady so often get out of the car and walk the parade route. And so I know there are a lot of people lining this route and hoping that they will. Just from the Revolutionary War garb that we saw a few moments ago to this great tradition of a parade down Pennsylvania Avenue, I think this whole day is a patriotic day and speaks to the best of our traditions. I couldn't help but reflect about how these traditions we have cut through the ages and bind us together, and I think that is why we're here today. I think that's why people tune in. It's nice to have at least one day out of 365 that we hope transcends politics or partisanship.
That's why I said at the start of our coverage this morning, if the kids are home from school today as part of the Martin Luther King holiday, please get them in front of the TV for all or part of today, because it's about time they saw Americans behaving well and saw something we do well. Michael Beschloss.
I think that's right. And, if we do see President Obama walking a little bit later, as I think might conceivably be possible, that follows on a tradition that's pretty new. Jimmy Carter in 1977, as was mentioned, walked almost the entire length of that avenue, and amazing that happened given the security situation, because that was January 1977. Less than 2 years earlier, Gerald Ford had 2 very serious near assassination attempt. So even in that atmosphere, Secret Service was willing to allow a president to do that.
And you see the speed at which this is traveling, no faster than the speed at which the average human can walk. And David Gregory, this is really to give people who have shown up a chance to see him. You'll note no crowd allowed on one side of the street. It's that tightly controlled there on the left of your picture.
You know, FaceTime is important in so many different settings. And I spoke to a member of the president's cabinet who said, you know, whether this is a flaw or a virtue, this president really doesn't see a lot of need for FaceTime with people who work for him. He doesn't have that great desire to be satiated that way, and his ego is different from other politicians that way. I'm not saying this is a test of whether he recognizes that need in others, but people do line this route because they want to see their president. As Savannah noted, this is a day when people are rooting for the president, whoever he is, and want him to succeed. But this idea that people want to be close to him, have some connection to him, that goes for the public at large. And it sort of raises this question that I continue to have about him, which is the extent to which he likes politics and likes being a political figure, which is, I think, different from being a leader of the country. How much he really enjoys the gamesmanship and the people aspect of politics.
Brian, one of the things I've been thinking about when we heard from Cameron was the warp speed with which communication has changed. When we talked about Ronald Reagan and his presidency and the impact it's had on American politics, I went out to Iowa to cover him in the Iowa caucus. When I rented a car, I had to ask for FM radio because it didn't automatically come with the car. And Bill Clinton's second term was the first one that was streamed on the internet. Not until 1997 that we did that. Think about the change that has occurred just in the past few years with our ability to communicate and share these experiences, but at the same time to use that instrumentation for mischief in our politics, and sometimes in a very vicious fashion.
And a little bit of a throwback back in that luncheon that we saw in the Capitol with the president, leaders of Congress not long ago, when they presented the president with a color photograph of his inauguration. You sort of think 40 years ago that would have been an enormous technological feat to have that already framed in just a few minutes. Nowadays, maybe not quite so.
I'm surprised they didn't just text it to him.
Absolutely.
We have reached the point in our coverage where Savannah Guthrie is leaving to fly on Savannah 1 north to New York to be in position for tomorrow's Today Show, having pulled a double shift for the last 2 days.
This is on the official.
Guys, it's an honor.
Also learning Tom Brokaw is going to fly with you, so just save some peanuts for him.
No, you've got me one more turn on Nightly News tonight, but you talked about the Medal of Honor winners. I'm going to the American Legion Ball to announce the parade you'll be tied up to. It's about 6:15 tonight, so I'm going to be there, and I'll be representing you on that as well, and I'll come back and try to tidy up the second half hour of night.
Please do. 25 of our recipients in one place. It's about the largest gathering of Medal of Honor recipients in any place among the 79 living recipients. We're going to get into more of the heart of the crowd here shortly. Who do we have along the route we can check into for a preview? You see how early we are still in this. Natalie Morales is our next correspondent up. We're still very, very close to the Capitol Inn. And imagine, Natalie, just pictured making this trip on foot, and that's the forward progress they're making.
That's right, and it's a 1.2-mile stretch, and you see they're moving fairly slowly so that everybody can get a glimpse. And you see the parade now well underway. Of course, we're still waiting for the president and his motorcade to make its way up this way. But I tell you, a lot of people here, a lot of young people here today marking the occasion because they know this is a moment in history they won't forget. And Tyler is...
When they get closer to you. In the meantime, back at the Capitol, a man we just saw as part of the leadership, part of the luncheon, and part of the send-off, Eric Cantor, the majority leader in the House of...
Watching right now, George and Diane.
Thank you, David Curley. I think we have another special guest on the phone right now. Stevie Wonder is joining us. Thank you for joining us today, Stevie. And this has to mean so much to you in so many ways, because I know so many years ago you helped spearhead the campaign to make Martin Luther King Day a national holiday.
Yeah, I mean, it's great for so many reasons. it was great just to see, to actually be and witness the first inauguration that I was able to. The last 4 years ago, I wasn't able to really be outside. It was crazy cold, so the weather was a little better, I think, this year. But I think that, we're down to dealing with some very real things, and that is uniting America. My saying has been for so many years, we must become a united people of the United States. And so I'm just very happy. I had already told Vice President Biden when I saw him, it was on, I think, a C-SPAN, this is back maybe 5 years ago. And that was when he was campaigning to become possibly president. And I just said, what would be an incredible marriage would be Barack Obama and he as vice president. And as time went on, that did happen, and he is a great spirit as well. So I'm very, very happy.
I know you're going to be performing tonight at one of the 2 inaugural balls. And did you know that last week you were featured on the president's inauguration playlist, which he released via Twitter?
Oh, really? Well, I think the First Lady said to me yesterday, we're having some kind of debate about, their most favorite TV Wonder songs. And I just feel, honored that they call it, listen to my music, and it's a great thing. It's still the best is yet to come, so I'm excited. My goal is to write a song that will unite America. That's my goal, and it's going to happen.
And we cannot wait for that, but until then, I'll bet you're going to sing Happy Birthday with real gusto tonight.
I am. For all of the people who live and died for the principles of the oneness of, all people. So, as I've always said, even before the holiday was an official national holiday, I said, listen, this day is for everyone to remember all of those, the various soldiers, just the various leaders that really lived and died for those principles. And so as we celebrate the King holiday, we celebrate all the various kings and queens that have made it possible for us to stand proudly at this moment.
Stevie, thank you so much for phoning in, and Godspeed in your mission to write that song that unites this country.
I'm excited, and I'm excited as well because we're going to do something that will also bring people together as to dealing with accessibility for people with disabilities. So thank you so much, and look forward to seeing you again.
And you as well. And I want to go to John Carl, our White House correspondent, Jonathan Carl, because now he's in the motorcade. John?
That's right, Diane. We're here on Pennsylvania Avenue, the president's limousine right behind us, and this avenue is just packed with people out here to see the president. And I got to tell you, we've talked to some folks along the way here. They have been here, some of them 7-8 hours more, waiting for this moment. It was quite cold this morning. They are out. These are the Obama ground troops. These are the people that helped him win re-election. And the president, of course, has run his last campaign, but he is still counting on them. That's why he is transforming that campaign organization into Organizing for Action, a new super PAC of sorts to help him get his agenda passed. And he's going to need it. He needs this energy. He needs these people who are out here enjoying this moment. Because if you heard what he was talking about in his inaugural speech about acting on things like climate change, if you hear what we anticipate we'll see in his State of the Union, talking about things like gun control, he right now doesn't have the votes he needs in Congress. So he's depending on the energy you're seeing here on Pennsylvania Avenue to put pressure on Congress to get done what needs to accomplish. We're a pretty amazing sight here. You see, and of course we anticipate at some point the president will get out and walk a little bit of this himself.
All right, John, I want to turn to Matt Dowd, because Matt, you've talked about the president's personality being a political force in a different way from other presidents.
Well, I think his personality in many ways is encompassed they said he's not a movement, he's a politician, but really those got combined with President Obama because it became a movement and a politician for president. So many people got involved that were never involved before, young people, minorities, because of him and who he was and his biography. And the other thing I think it's important to keep in mind on a day like today is most major public policy change in the United States history usually needs a second term to become solidified. And if Barack Obama had lost this and not been inaugurated today, there's many ways that maybe his health care reform would have been undone and many other things have been undone. If you look at the history of the country, it usually takes that election the second time around to solidify the change that you made. Otherwise, it gets undone. And I think that's a huge part of him winning this election and getting inaugurated. His change is going to get solidified.
And I want to read a statement from the ever-gracious President George H.W. Bush, 41, 88 years old. He said this: Barbara and I send President and Mrs. Obama and their wonderful girls our best wishes and prayers on this historic day. May Almighty God bless them and our wonderful country over the next 4 years.
The always gracious President Bush. Mark Updegrove, pick up on what Matthew Dowd was just saying about second terms and how they can solidify the legacy of presidents. And, healthcare, so important, it's just starting to be implemented right now.
Correct. So much of what a president does in the first term can be undone by the next president. You just mentioned George H.W. Bush. One of the things he lamented upon not getting reelected is that he didn't get a chance to finish his agenda. He likened it to an African in the Olympics who had run the marathon and got injured along the way and wasn't able to continue, but he actually started running and finished. It went to
parties going on.
There might be some parties.
Beverages being consumed right now.
Maybe professionally related too.
Yeah.
And another thing there is the Willard Hotel, which is on the same site as an earlier Willard Hotel, which is where Abraham Lincoln stayed the night before he was inaugurated in 1861.
And whereas you no doubt know, the word lobbying came to be.
Indeed, which had a slightly happier connotation in those days than it often does these days, but the idea was that people would sit in the lobby and try to accost a senator or member of Congress. This is never done nowadays.
No, of course not.
Try to bend their ear to advance some of their own private interests.
And while we're tour guiding, and they passed by, but the Native American Museum is also a relatively new structure downtown that is so beautiful and great if you're visiting Washington.
You mentioned the museum. It was the idea of our late great friend Tim Russer to print the First Amendment on the front of that building. It's become ranked right up there among the top tourist destinations for good reason. When people come to visit this great city, they learn a lot about the news media there. But you're right, our neighbors to the north have a good
fantastic piece of property.
I think they better keep their relationship with us if they want to keep that building, don't you think?
Willie Geist, they're coming by you.
Yep, those cheers you hear, the President and the First Lady just announced on the public address system behind me. He's making his way in that armored limousine known as the Beast, coming up our way. Jimmy Carter set a precedent in 1977 when he got out of that car with his wife Rosalind and his daughter Amy. A lot of people along this route expecting, hoping that the President will get out, perhaps give them a wave. I mentioned earlier, this is the exact spot outside the U.S. Navy Memorial where 4 years ago the President did get out of the limousine and say hello to some of the folks here who've been here before dawn when we got here to set up. A lot of people lined up along this line. Some pretty cool moments with this crowd. Brian, you talked about the kids being here. There's a young 6-year-old girl named Sage from Columbia, Maryland. I just watched her passed up about 5 rows by perfect strangers because they said she ought to see this. And here she is on the front row now, watching the Vice President, the President of the United States, and the First Lady of the United States pass her by. Obviously a day she won't soon forget. And now here he is, the President of the United States and the First Lady, to roars from this crowd, Brian.
And as we continue to point out, law enforcement, those are Utah State Troopers, some of whom saluting, and others whose job it is to watch the crowd, and there's the President. And that is from Willie Guy's camera angle, is the kind of perfectly average camera angle, the picture that most people will get along this route. The glass that has to be so thick because it's bulletproof heavily tinted green, but you do at least get to see the president.
So different from the old days when the president and first lady would sit on a raised seat in one of those convertibles. Yeah. Absolutely. And the other thing is that in terms of walking, and that goes all the way back to Thomas Jefferson, who felt that John Adams and George Washington in their inaugurations had gotten too regal, so he decided to strip it down, ride up the hill on his horse, and walk to show his closeness to the people. I think he missed a bet, though, because Jefferson was someone who felt that presidents should be very involved with members of Congress, and I think he underestimated the potential of inauguration to bring that about.
And I guess when we talk about the Jimmy Carter precedent, it was really during the limousine era, and also was known for its rare PDA among first couples. They held hands most of the route, and that wasn't always done. Tamron Hall, how are things in the motorcade?
Oh, things are fantastic, Brian. We're in front of the FBI headquarters, and you've seen, a series of reactions from people. I think one of the things that I am marveled at is how many people have iPhones and iPhone technologies. Right, here we go, Brian.
Heads up, Tamron.
The vehicles are being approached. The crowd is screaming. And Brian, this is our moment. Here we go. There you have it. The First Lady of the United States and the President making their first exit from the vehicle as anticipated. And here we are, Brian. They're holding hands, as you can see, walking along this blue line that illuminates, for lack of a better description, the parade route. But there they are, this couple that we witnessed 4 years ago with their young children come to this town, and now the First Lady and the President making this walk the final time. From the distance that we see here, they are smiling. As you can see, they're waving, and the crowd, as we say, is going crazy right now, Brian. Enthusiastic, happy, and there are smiles as far as you can see, and cameras. I've never seen so many 6-year-olds with iPhones that can snap pictures on their own. It's just exciting, and it is just an inspiration to be here to watch these faces accept and embrace this first family.
Thank you, Tamron. We're all taking this in at the same time. We have a portable camera that's able to walk out ahead of the first couple, kind of revolve around them. That is the FBI building to the left.
Brian, it's interesting as we watch these images, you reflect back 4 years ago, the newness of this couple, the cultural impact they were having, as well as the political impact. That has not really diminished, even though we're in a different place 4 years on. But it is striking, not to get into Michael's territory here, but the second time in our history we've had 3 consecutive 2-term presidents.
Absolutely.
So much political ferment, and yet that measure of consistency is notable.
Pete Souza, their veteran photographer, is backtracking just in front of the couple. He's the gentleman you see allowed to get the closest to take pictures. Vic, the president's lead agent, is the gentleman with the goatee to the president's side, walking a comfortable but safe distance alongside the couple. Michael, to David's point, that is one of the great kind of misindicators of our politics.
Right, because you remember the period of the late 80s and going back to the 70s, periods between the 70s and the first decade of the century where there was sort of a conventional wisdom that we may be going through a period of 1-term presidencies. But in a way, this may be a case of the exception proving the rule, because if you look at the margins by which many of these presidents got office in the last 12 years or so, very close election 2000, extremely close election 2004, somewhat close election, it seemed, in 2012. So in a way, this may be as much flukish as it suggests a pattern.
It's a beautiful picture. We, as we said, we have been blessed with this, considering everything else that could be going on a January afternoon. What a beautiful afternoon in Washington. Beautiful weather. Cold, yes, but the sun is out.
And Brian, there's something very retro about this that I think we as Americans like. We like this pageantry. We like the tradition.
We talked so much about security, but we want our presidents to get out and walk a little bit with the First Lady so they can be seen, so we can have all these cultural reference points and historical reference points. And we've got that, and we see it again, so we can make these comparisons.
Hey guys, give me a cross street. Is that the Justice Department on that?
Just by. And a little bit further in the rear, the National Archives, where reside, as you well know, the Declaration of Independence and the Constitution, in which there are provisions for what a president does and actually how he's inaugurated. So it really returns full circle.
And over the door it is written, what is past is prologue, and that's a lesson we keep forgetting in American history.
None of the three of us will disagree with that.
In politics, if it happened before, there's a good chance it'll happen again. This is just a beautiful live picture.
And I think David is absolutely right, because one of the calming and inspiring things about this is that we did see presidents in scenes like this, and sometimes first ladies walking in parades this way, and so much more often is just the face of the president behind that very thick bulletproof glass in that big car. It's sort of nice to return to the earlier times.
There's one of those David Gregory parties going on.
It wasn't wild enough, I think.
And we talked about this before, Brian. Here is a president who has just been reelected by the American people in a down economy, when history was against him in that respect, given the economic conditions, who overcame that, defied history again, who has a renewed sense of confidence, as any second-term president does. So how are the thoughts different going through his mind now on this walk than they were 4 years ago?
That's right. Are they coming up on the old post office on the First Lady's side here?
Yeah, I believe they are.
Yes, there it is.
Which has seen an awful lot of inaugural parades over the years.
Tamron Hall remains on her vehicle, which has been doing a little weaving in and out to get the best camera shot of the president. Tamron?
He's saying that. Okay. Hi.
Hey, Tamron.
Hi. We are here in another area, Brian, where it's this deafening roar. The president and the first lady have walked more than 2 blocks now, and you can bet people are wondering, are they going to stay out of the vehicle and continue on? The crowds now where we are located, in front of the old post office, I don't know, maybe 30, 40 people deep at this point. We're kind of stop and start, so forgive the jerky nature of this live hit here, but as you can imagine, the pace has changed greatly. There's a slow pace to this caravan, this procession, so that these people have an opportunity to soak in what they are seeing, which is a leisurely stroll by the president and the first lady on this amazing day. I don't think you could have scripted this better, being his second inauguration, the weather, and watching them stroll like a lovely couple, quite honestly, who would be enjoying Washington, D.C., except for they're joined by about 1 million people and another 1 million cameras, Brian, but if you look at their faces, it's just a beautiful stroll by this couple who's gone through so much. I lived in Chicago and watched them make their way through the political system and the politics of that town, and now they're here in this city, and we know the impact worldwide that the election of Barack Obama has had, including the second term. So we're watching as they make this stroll, and it appears that, Brian, they may be getting back in that vehicle, but we'll have to see. If they get in, they may get out a second time, as they did 4 years ago, Brian.
They're getting in. Tamron, as you were talking, we watched the president's lead agent raise his microphone to his mouth. The call went out, the car stopped, the doors open, and at least this part of this stroll is over. Doors closed, he'll get back in, and they'll be back underway. But as everyone has mentioned, what a great thrill for all these people along the parade route. Look at those taillights. Look at the amount of active duty and reserve military uniforms who form many parts of this parade route, the kind of first ring of security, assisted by law enforcement, cadets. And now we can hear some music. It says redcoats again. I thought we had settled that.
Brian, it is a test of citizenship, though, in D.C., particularly if you're in Northwest, to guess who's in the passing motorcade by the number of cars. Right? You got
We did it yesterday. My wife and I were trying to count off the vehicles. We trying to figure out who it was. We knew it wasn't the president, but it's
the deceptive can be the first lady, right?
Yeah, that's right.
She, that's the one.
Sure,
it's bigger than average. It's bigger than the VP's motorcade.
Indeed. And certainly was not the secretary.
In the crowd today, they are not feeling the air. They're jumping up and down, waving American flags. We also saw earlier, I saw some people holding up blankets with the image of Martin Luther King on them. So Martin Luther King also very present on a number of minds today on this, of course, MLK Day, and at this plaza, which was renamed Freedom Plaza in his honor, Brian.
Erica, thank you. A terrific moment as the president passed your camera location. We should note there's a light on the president in the back seat to help people see him, and the only other passenger in the kind of four-place passenger compartment in the back, it's an amazingly narrow car because of all the armor. There isn't much room for passengers in the back at the end of the day. Is Pete Souza, their photographer, who was sitting facing the first couple and getting, one would assume, some amazing pictures of them waving out the windows.
We've known the White House photographers over the years, and if you cover the White House, you get to know them quite well. And most people don't know that here are these people who capture these iconic moments, and they have naturally a close relationship with the first family, yet they are almost indecipherable. They're
invisible.
They're invisible in their lives, and yet they're there. And watching Pete recently, when I interviewed the president, he comes in, you don't even realize he's there, and he's right in the middle of everything, capturing the moment really, really well.
There has been some hubbub with our still photographer and video friends in the press corps that this White House has relied too heavily on our friend Pete and his photos, when normally some opportunities for free press to photograph the president would have existed, and that debate will go on forever.
And I'm all for having more than just Pete. To go on the record for sure.
Mr. Gregory on the record.
Yeah.
So am I.
And we should probably also add Pete Souza's provenance, which was that he was the one who was Ronald Reagan's photographer in 1980 by accident.
Yeah. There's a brief shot of the British, and now Tamron Hall is, let's set the scene here, because Tamron Hall continues to roll along on the motorcade, and we're coming up to where both Andrea Mitchell and Chuck Todd are. So Tamron, you have just passed Erica Hill's position on the plaza.
I have indeed, and we're about 100 yards from the final destination here, Brian. I'm sorry I didn't see Erica. I didn't get a chance to see Natalie either, but I've had an incredible view of the president and the first lady. Again, you see their vehicle just a few yards from us, and you have folks continuing to wave, and that roar. I think when people realize that it is, in fact, the vehicle carrying the president. I know that sounds surreal. They're all out here to see the president, but there's something about that moment when they realize there's the vehicle and you hear the roar instantly when that realization takes place. So we are making the turn, and we're not very far. We're at 15th Street, and we're making the turn, Brian, to see if perhaps on this more narrow strip, will they get out of the vehicle again? I believe this is where they got out around the second time during his first inauguration. So brace yourself, because we may be in for another fun time watching that lovely couple take a stroll casually in Washington, D.C. on a day where they really are the only celebrities. This is their red carpet, as one article pointed out. There are two celebrities who count in this town, not Beyonce and Jay-Z. It's the First Lady and the President, Brian.
Just your average couple taking a walk in the afternoon sunlight on a January afternoon. So, Tamron, you've made the turn now. Those familiar? This is the 15th Street turn, correct?
I'm unable to hear your question. I'm sorry.
Okay, that's all right. Tamron, we knew we were going to lose communications with Tamron Hall. Let's bring in Chuck Todd. Chuck, set the scene, the motorcade in relation to the reviewing stand.
Well, but we cannot yet see the motorcade yet from here. We have the escort and the marching bands. We've seen the U.S. Army Band, Marine Band. They have made their ways through, and there appears to be a stop. He may get out here and walk this. This is what he did 4 years ago. And Brian, I should point out, as somebody who used to drive on Pennsylvania Avenue. When they first moved here, there was a time everybody used to drive on this part of Pennsylvania Avenue. Of course, it got closed down back in the early 90s. But this is the most traffic this part of Pennsylvania Avenue sees every 4 years these days.
Yeah, Chuck, I mean, as recently as when I covered the Clinton White House, I used to get dropped off for work on Pennsylvania Avenue and walk in the Northwest. It's hard to believe that it was that short a time ago that it was open to vehicular traffic.
9/11. Right, this was pre-9/11 that they shut that down.
It was really, sadly, Oklahoma City,
right?
And the threat of a large explosive and what it would do to that sandstone structure that led the Secret Service to deliver their recommendation to the Clinton family that on behalf of the nation, they should shut it down, and they did. David?
Brian, there's some symmetry to the day. We keep talking about how lovely it is for January. What did the president talk about? How the climate is changing. I'm sure he'll get out of the car again to just make that point again, that this is something he quite intends to take on. The atmospherics today only reinforce his point. Of course, the debate is about what government ought to be doing about it, but
maybe roll up his sleeves to show how warm.
Yeah, take off the overcoat for sure to make the point politically, right?
Yeah. So we're on 15th Street.
To the White House at the conclusion of the swearing-in ceremony. The presidential escort
passing by the Treasury Department, right?
The crowd is thinned here by necessity, and note how they manage the crowd to prevent surges. They don't allow big, wide lanes. So some of those runners we've seen who want to kind of keep up with the motorcade are usually prevented by choke points. And a lot of the side streets are blocked. You see the risers for media and invited guests. Every one of these risers, people aren't there by accident. They are supporters, donors, friends of the administration, people who helped along the way during the campaign. We're not far from the famous rooftop bar, the Hotel Washington, one of the most beautiful places to enjoy a cocktail if you're David Gregory on a summer night in Washington.
Generally a Sunday night.
Social life is
Sunday's a new Saturday, I like to say.
And what would an inauguration be without at least a half-hearted attempt by... They want to see Al Roker.
This is the turn on to Pennsylvania, right?
I don't think so. They've turned a little, they've gotten out a little early, I think. We see the crowd now really getting excited on this side of Pennsylvania Avenue.
He's out of the car. He's facing the crowd behind him. This is right at the elbow of the turn that goes in front. You're in front of the Treasury Department. The red brick building in the background is the old Riggs Bank building, and this will take in the final home stretch down a short section of Pennsylvania Avenue.
Easily defended part of this whole route, wouldn't you say?
Maybe the most heavily defended piece of pavement in the entire city. That's a built-in guard shack in the background, and this section of road, since it was closed down, has been lined with cameras and guards. The White House gate, the first of the White House gates, will be coming up on the right side of your picture.
Section of Pennsylvania Avenue, despite not being able to drive on it, which is unfortunate, has become a great pedestrian mall.
That's true.
For visitors and
protesters,
people playing street hockey. There's all kinds of things going on there.
That's right. No pressure on Al Roker, but anything less than an interview here will be considered a failure.
Oh, thank you very much. Well, I think we can pretty much assume that it's going to be a failure.
Strong point and a thumbs up. I think that's really strong.
It's the best we can hope for at this point.
I can see them. There he is. boxes. There's a large truck blocking me. Mr. President! Mr. President! Mr. President! Mr. President! Mr. President! Mr. President! How's it going? Is the weather good? Is that fantastic? All right, Mr. President!
Wow, that's huge. There you have it, the first interview with the newly re-inaugurated 44th President of the United States.
That was good.
Okay? Okay?
Wow. That was, I think, an interview. We're checking with the National Board of Review, but I think it met the minimum standards. Question asked, question answered, follow-up.
Hey, hey, if there's anybody who can meet a minimum standard, it's me.
There you go. And Al Roker, ladies and gentlemen, the President has endorsed the weather and his own re-inauguration.
There you go. He gave his own forecast earlier. He said it would be warmer. In fact, it was, and he verified.
Al, how would you describe the President's mood during the interview?
I think he was confident. He was confident yet humble. I think it was, all in all, I think one of his best of this young second term.
Al Roker, ladies and gentlemen, fresh from his exclusive first interview with the newly re-inaugurated President Obama. Wow, as service members now fill in to make sure that doesn't happen again.
They're reviewing Secret Service protocol right now.
Yeah, we'll see in a couple of years. Chuck Todd and Andrea Mitchell are now coming into the heart of the order. This is the friends and family seating area, as both Chuck and Andrea mentioned earlier. If you got tickets along this...
We've got the Obamas right below us on this reviewing stand. As you can see, they're now walking and waving, and the crowd is going crazy, Brian. First they went crazy because of Al Roker's exclusive interview, but now they're really going crazy because they see the president.
Are we supposed to do a follow-up? Are we supposed to do a Al Roker? Hey, Mr. President, Al Roker still needs you. Nothing.
And these folks have been so excited, and now they see the President and First Lady walking right along Pennsylvania Avenue. I mean, they're only about 15, 20 yards from the reviewing stand, so it's really pretty exciting. We earlier saw Craig Robinson, Mrs. Robinson, the rest of the family coming out of the VIP buses, Jim Messina coming out, and other top staff people. And so the Obamas will go back into the White House, freshen up, and be in that reviewing stand. It's really pretty exciting.
And talk about weather, I keep harping on this, but what a huge factor, because imagine the alternative. Imagine precipitation, cold that's any more biting than today. They're having such a palpably good time, in part because it's halfway to comfortable outside for a January afternoon in Washington. Tamron Hall, this is where the motorcade comes to an end.
Hey, Brian, as you can hear the swell of the screams here, it's so interesting to see the First Lady and the President enjoying themselves. I'm not sure if you caught a glimpse, but there was a moment, there was a little bit of bounce in the First Lady's step. And at one point, I believe it was a Secret Service person who walked over to her, and she appeared to say, "No, I'm okay." But there literally was a bounce in her step just as they passed the review stand. And when you think about it, Dwight Eisenhower had a 4.5-hour parade. We've scaled back only 15,000 participants, but on a day like today, these people could stay out here for 6 or 7 hours and beat Eisenhower's record of 4.5-hour inaugural parade based on the enthusiasm and the perfect weather. So 15,000 participants, 8 floats, but there are 2 people, as you know, Brian, right now, who matter most, and one of them has a huge smile, the other has a bounce in her step, and I don't have to tell you who I'm referring to. So it is incredible. This parade has gone rather smoothly, quickly, and based again on the weather, people could stay out here several more hours and put it into the record held by the wonderful Dwight Eisenhower at the time, Brian.
That's right. Tamron, thank you. All right, here we go. Cover your ears at home. Cover your watch pistols.
Mr. Vice President! Mr. Vice President! Mr. Vice President! Mr. Vice President!
president. And so my parents would be very proud. I think they're looking down and they're very happy.
Well, thank you, Al Roker. That was thrilling for us to watch. I imagine it must have been something.
Ladies and gentlemen, the President of the United States and Mrs. Michelle Obama.